We heard my story back in episode 315. Now the tables are turned and it's Craig's turn to go under my spotlight. Find out more about Craig and his past in this episode of
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hi, I'm Reza.
And my name's Craig.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you, Craig?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm really looking forward to this episode because this is the chance for me to take my revenge. Now you are in the hot seat.
And I'm feeling quite nervous. If you're new to the podcast, you're very welcome. This episode is slightly different from other episodes that we tend to focus on vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, etc. This is basically interview based for anyone interested in finding out a little bit more about me and, of course, improving your listening skills.
And the reason we are recording this episode and the reason why we recorded the episode about me, 315, is because people asked. It's not just that we're super egocentric maniacs. No, quite a few people asked about the story of our lives. So we decided to make a couple of episodes of the podcast telling you all about us.
And there's an expression in English which is, be careful what you ask for.
Oh, that sounds ominous.
You might just get it. And who asked? Well, our friend Dominique from France.
Hello guys, I am Dominique from France. How are you? I hope that you are enjoying the beginning of the beautiful summer, especially after the lockdown. Thank you for the podcast about Reza's story. It was interesting to know more about his ancestors, siblings, and family tree. Now, I would like to have the same podcast about Craig, how he has met his wife, in which language he communicates with her, in English or Spanish. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dominique. I realized that you sent this message a while ago because you were speaking about the summer and we're now in autumn, but we did get to your message eventually, so thanks a lot for having an interest in my life.
Yes, Dominique, thanks for your patience. You waited a long time for us to record this episode, but your wish is our command, as the genie in the bottle said. So here it comes.
But before me, if you want to listen to Reza's story, go to episode 315. So that's inglespodcast.com/315 to hear all about Reza's life.
Shall we get cracking, Craig?
What does that mean, get cracking?
When I say, shall we get cracking, Craig, there's a comma between cracking and Craig. I'm not going to crack Craig.
You better explain the difference.
It's very common to say in English, shall we get cracking? It's a colloquial way of saying, shall we get started, to get cracking? And I'm asking Craig, but to crack something is to split it open. I'm not going to split Craig open. I'm saying, Craig, shall we get cracking? Shall we get cracking, Craig?
Go for it.
Okay, well, let's start off with basic questions. We've probably mentioned a few of these before, but since we want to get the whole picture, we may be repeating ourselves a bit. So, Craig, where were you born and where did you grow up?
Well, that's an easy first question. I was born in Essex, which is a county in the UK, and it really was a suburb of London. If you've been to London and you've travelled on the Underground, the train system underground, then you may remember the Central Line, which is the red one in the middle. And if you go to the east, to the right of that, that's where I grew up, in a place called Redbridge, Ilford, Gants Hill, that area.
So you're an Essex boy, an Essex man.
Essex boy, yes.
Essex is a beautiful part of the world. I mean, The Thames estuary is in Essex and it's very rural, and I imagine it's one of the most beautiful parts of England, is it?
It is, and I don't go back to the UK often, but I do have a good friend who lives in a village in Essex in what they call the Green Belt, which is an area, a strip, a narrow belt of green and trees and grass and fields that circles London, especially in the Essex area. And he lives in a beautiful, beautiful village in Essex.
And Craig, are you still in touch with your childhood friends from Essex?
Not many. I can probably count them on one hand, although one very good friend I have, Graham, I've known him since we were both 6 or 7 years old. He moved with his family to Australia, to Sydney, and we kept in touch all these years. And now he moved again because of his job to work in Singapore. So when this virus is over and the travel restrictions have lifted, I'd love to go and visit him in Singapore because we stay in touch and he is still a very, very close friend.
Have you got any brothers or sisters?
Yes, one sister. She's 9 years older and her name's Stephanie.
And she's lovely. I've met her. She's a really lovely woman. Okay, apart from teaching, what other jobs have you done in your life?
I kind of anticipated this question, so I've made a list and I made it quickly. I may have forgotten some of the things I've done and I've got paid for. I write material. I still do write material for English courses. So obviously I'm a teacher as well. I've been an insurance broker, a farmer, a factory worker, a civil servant in the UK, a barman in different pubs, a construction worker, a cleaner, a driver. At the moment, I'm editing audio, so I'm an audio editor professionally. I've been a fruit picker, picking fruit. I've milked cows, painted houses. There's actually not much I haven't done for money. And I've been teaching, as you know, for about 25 years, the same time as you.
Yeah. Oh, he says there's not much I haven't done for money. But Craig, don't tell them that story you told me when you were drunk about that basement and you had to take your clothes off. Don't tell them that story, what you did for money.
No, let's keep it clean, Reza. I'll keep it clean. Those are the clean jobs.
You said civil servant. Can you explain to the listeners what a civil servant means?
In Spanish, you'd say funcionario. So I used to work for the government in the Department of Social Security. So I used to decide which people were entitled to supplementary benefits for being unemployed or single mothers, etc. So I worked in an office that calculated people's entitlement to government money.
So, Craig, you've done so many jobs for money. Is there anything you wouldn't do for money?
No comment.
Craig has very high moral standards, I can assure you. What would be your dream job?
My dream job for many years was a travel writer. My wife loves photography, and we've spoken a few times about the possibility of traveling and writing about places we visit and taking photos. And it's very common these days if you go online to see travel bloggers and they take pictures of places and they write about working and traveling. But these days, I think I'd be just happy to be financially independent, which means I don't have to stay in one place and work in a language school. I could work anywhere in the world. And when we can travel again freely, then I'd be able to visit more countries and work with a laptop and work away from home.
What made you decide to start teaching English?
Many years ago, a friend of mine who was my neighbour when I was living abroad, he wanted to pick up girls. To pick up is legal. So he didn't speak any English and he was working in gardens he was a gardener and he was working with Swedish volunteers and he wanted to speak to these girls, but he didn't have any English. And I did not know how to teach him. So I got an old grammar book, and started to teach him some words. And I didn't really know how to teach him the grammar, but I really enjoyed helping him. And eventually he started speaking some English. I got satisfaction from that. And then I went back to the UK to do a teaching course to learn how to teach professionally. So it was that experience trying to teach my language to someone who really wanted to learn it, and I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the ability to teach it effectively.
So you mentioned going away to England and going back there. So what other countries have you lived in apart from England and Spain?
I lived in America for a while. I lived in North America in New York. I was working as a waiter in a cafe and living with my then girlfriend. And I also lived in Israel for quite a few years, volunteering in different places in Israel.
When you worked as a waiter in America, is it true what they say? Was the pay really bad?
The basic pay was not good. It was about $100 a week. But if you got good tips, and Americans tend to tip very generously, then it was okay.
And you said you did volunteer work in Israel, did you say?
Yes, I volunteered in agriculture, and I volunteered for a while as a teacher in an Arab Jewish community center. The community center wanted to try to bring Muslims and Jewish people together, although it was 99% Muslim. The classroom, there was one Jewish man sitting at the back and he didn't say much. But the idea, and it was a lovely program, was to try and encourage peace and cooperative learning between the two cultures. And that was in Yafo, which is next to Tel Aviv.
Do you think you had some success?
I think I had success teaching English, but in those days there were lots of problems, and there still are, between the communities. So the larger picture, no, but I think the people who were in the class enjoyed the classes, and I think they appreciated me being there and helping them with their English.
And why did you decide to settle here in Valencia?
Family. I was teaching abroad. My parents moved here with my sister and her husband, and I decided I would rather be closer to them here in Spain than live in London with a friend. So the closest place I could get to where they were living was here in Valencia. This is where I could find a job as a teacher.
Okay, so you've worked in quite a few places, Spain, Israel, England, America. What's the best place you've ever visited on holiday?
How would you describe best? Do you mean people, food, scenery?
Well, you tell me. Maybe you can choose different places for different categories.
I really enjoyed visiting New Zealand for the people, the scenery, the feeling in the country. I love New Zealand. The only problem is it's so far from Spain. It's a very long flight. I love Japan for the culture, the food, and the way of living. And I also really enjoyed Thailand for similar reasons. The people, the culture, the friendliness, the food. So those three countries stand out to me as being lovely places to visit.
Is there any place you'd love to visit in the future that you haven't visited yet?
Oh, many. Yeah, there are still many places I'd love to visit. And we've had messages from people from the countries, and we've spoken about many Central and South American countries like Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, Panama, Costa Rica. Looks beautiful. I've never been there. And also Canada. I'd love to go to Canada and see some of the landscape and travel around Canada too.
Let's move on a bit, Craig, to a different area. Now, I've got some information which may cause a bit of sadness for some of your female listeners. Craig is married. He's taken already. Sorry, ladies. So, Craig, when, where, and how did you meet your wife?
I don't think our listeners are that desperate, Reza. She was a student of mine years ago. So I used to teach her English, and the relationship developed from a professional one to a personal one.
Okay, so your wife's Spanish, right? She's from Valencia.
She is.
So how do you communicate? In what language?
Spanglish.
Really?
Yeah. It's really strange because we understand each other completely, but sometimes because we're using a mixture of English and Spanish, sometimes when I speak to Spanish people who I don't know and I say something that my wife would understand, they look at me with that puzzled look that you get sometimes when people haven't got a clue what you're speaking about. But no, seriously, we tend to speak in Spanish or English. If I'm angry or tired, I go to English, of course. If I'm swearing and saying bad words, that's usually in English. But the first year of our relationship, she didn't really speak much English and I didn't speak any Spanish, so we didn't argue for the first year. And it was lovely.
What Craig said earlier, he said, be careful what you wish for. You want to speak better English? More arguments then in the future.
Now our arguing vocabulary is very wide.
Craig, have you ever been married before?
Nearly.
What do you mean by nearly?
Well, we arranged to get married. It was a girl I met many years ago, and we'd set the date for the wedding, and we were organising the wedding, and I decided it was not a good idea. It was my fault. I cancelled the wedding 3 months before.
You got cold feet.
Exactly. What's cold feet?
Cold feet whenever at the last minute you don't want to go ahead with something. You get worried, you get frightened, you get nervous, and you pull out, you abandon it at the last minute.
I got cold feet 3 months before the wedding date, and it was a very difficult time. Obviously, it was very, very hard for both of us, especially for her, and we split up. We are in touch. We have kept in touch, but no, this is the only time I've been married.
And that girlfriend from a long time ago, your former fiancée, which is someone that you're going to marry, but you haven't married yet, did she forgive you?
You'd have to ask her, wouldn't you? That's a question for her, not for me.
Have you ever considered having your own children?
Seriously considered? Probably not. We've talked about it in the past, and I think that boat has sailed, which means it's something that's not going to be possible now, but maybe it was in the past. So if the boat has sailed, it's no longer an option. It's no longer a choice. And we also spoke of adopting, but we really didn't, I think, want to. We liked our life the way it was, and we still love and enjoy our life together. We're free to travel, we're free to do things. And I don't think people should be not forced, but should have the obligation to have children because it's the thing to do. So yes, there was some pressure from family to have kids, but I don't see why you should automatically have kids because it's expected of you. If both of you are happy with the life the way it is, it's a huge change to have children. And maybe I'll regret it one day, but at the moment I don't regret it.
You just mentioned the word family. So family or friends, what's more important to you?
Oh, that's a question that's very difficult to answer. There's a saying, an expression, that the friends you have, you choose, but the family you're stuck with. You have no choice with your family. And I think that's true. My family was a very small, my immediate family was very small. My parents, my sister's husband, that was the family. Yes, we've got cousins in the UK, we've got other relatives, but they are distant family that we were never close to. So the family was very small, and sadly, some of my family members have passed away. They've died. So now my family is even smaller, and my friends are becoming more important as my family is shrinking or getting smaller. So I would give them equal importance at the moment for me, but I think your blood relatives, I think that bond, that connection is always going to be stronger than friends, even if you haven't chosen them. They're not maybe people that you would normally choose to be in the company of. Does that make sense? Do you agree with that?
Yes, and I think many people would agree with you that I would say exactly the same. And I'm sure many of our listeners would also 100% agree. Just to change the focus a bit, what music do you listen to?
All sorts. I listen to all sorts of music, all kinds of music. I like soul, blues, jazz, some classical, rock music, heavy rock. Recently, I've been listening to Van Halen because he died. We're making this podcast in 2020, and Eddie Van Halen was a wonderful guitarist, but I never really knew his music, and now I'm listening to him. So my tastes vary. The only kind of music that I really don't enjoy listening to is country and western.
And I think you're not alone. You're not alone. It's not a popular genre outside the United States. It's not many people's cup of tea, is it? What about stuff like electronic music, like the type of music you might hear at a rave, hip hop, that type of thing?
I love hip hop and rap music very much. Some electronic music, if it's chill out and if it's light, not very heavy, I like it. But if it's too heavy, then it depends. I do like drum and bass very much, but there's some house music that I'm not very keen on.
Craig, is there anything about yourself you'd like to change?
Where shall we start?
Let's start. Before we get physical, let's start with your character.
With my character, I'd like to develop more positive habits. I'm constantly working on habits, and I'm very aware that as you get older, your habits become stronger and they really control your life, and it's difficult to change them.
Would you say you're a creature of habit?
I think the fact that I think about my habits and developing good ones and removing bad ones probably means I'm not. Although it is difficult to change habits. For example, I'm trying to develop the habit of going to bed earlier and waking up earlier, because I usually go to bed quite late watching Netflix and watching things, and that makes me get up later and I miss part of the morning, and that annoys me. So I'm trying to develop that habit. I'm trying to read more. So there's certain habits that I'm trying to develop, and because I do that, maybe I'm not a creature of habit. I think everybody has habits. Everybody has a routine that they repeat every day. And I think it's important to notice what you do and just ask the question, am I happy with this? Is this okay? Or can I improve it? Can I change it and make it better?
They also say old habits die hard. Are there any habits that you just can't stop? You can't give up?
There's got to be eating chocolate, hasn't it? Which ties into one thing physically I'd like to change. I'm constantly trying to lose weight. I've been on a diet for years, as my friend, how much I try to lose weight, and I find it difficult to resist sweet things and chocolates and cakes. So I'm constantly fighting that and trying to get my weight down. But I've been exercising more, and I feel good at the moment the way it's going.
They often say that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. With Craig, I think we could be even more specific. It has to be, yes, through his stomach, but via chocolate, which is at least 90% cocoa. And any less and you won't get into your stomach, am I right?
Nearly. 90% of it's strong for me. That's the hard drug. I would stop maybe at 75% cocoa. That's as high as I'd go. But
that's your bottom line, no less than that.
Well, maybe 80 at a push. So anything over 80% will be too bitter. Too bitter.
Oh, I thought you liked the stronger the better.
No.
You have your limits.
Have you tasted 99% cocoa?
Yeah, in fact, I have, yeah.
It's very bitter.
Yes, I found that if I ate it with something else, if I ate it with a bit of biscuit or something, then I appreciated it. On its own, it was a bit too bitter, yeah.
The sweet spot for me, no pun intended, actually, it is the sweet spot.
The bit that's just right, not too much one way, not too much the other, just...
Exactly. The sweet spot for me would be 70%.
Yeah, for about me as well, actually. Although I don't eat as much chocolate as Craig, he's a big fan.
Nobody eats as much chocolate as Craig.
For me, like you, I do like it fairly dark. So 70 to about 85% is my favorite spot. But I probably don't eat as much chocolate as Craig. One of the things I love about coming to Craig's house is there are always great goodies, nice things to eat, which generally feature chocolate. That's one of the best things about coming here.
That's because you come in the morning, my friend. If you were here in the evening, there might not be much left.
I would already be eaten. Craig, do you have any heroes, or is there anybody you really look up to?
The Dalai Lama is an idol of mine.
I think you met him, didn't you?
I shook his hand once. I didn't speak to him. I was in a line of people and he came along, and one of his helpers, one of his assistants, put a silk scarf around my neck, and he shook my hand and said hello, and he moved to the next person.
Did you feel anything from him? Did he give off an aura, a special kind of atmosphere, energy?
Not really. He looked tired, but he had a lovely smiley face. He looked very at peace and very relaxed. And I just admire him as a person, and I think his philosophy is very good.
His philosophy of peace and understanding, that type of thing.
His philosophy of life as a Buddhist, yeah.
Would you call yourself a Buddhist?
No, I have an interest in Buddhism, and I think it's a lovely way of life. I'm not sure if I'd like to follow it as a religion because I don't believe in reincarnation, which is one of the main concepts. But everything else seems great to me. Not to do harm and not to kill anything and just to live a peaceful life.
I think Buddhists believe you come back as another living being. Is that right?
A sentient being, yeah.
Yeah. If you could change the rules a bit, if you could come back as a really, really good bar of chocolate, would you be tempted?
No, because somebody would eat me. I'd be eaten.
Well, it depends who eats you, I guess, Okay, let's move on. Right. And then they might dip you in a nice hot drink. Okay, let's move on. Craig, I know apart from chocolate, you enjoy your food in general, like myself. Is there any food you enjoy a lot, or is there any food you just can't stand apart from chocolate?
I can't stand celery, apio, and I'm not keen on radishes that sometimes appear in salads.
Radishes, that's rabanos, isn't it? Yeah.
Rabanos, yeah. Don't like those very much. And food I really like, I love bacon. If you want to make me happy, make me a bacon sandwich with lovely Irish butter inside.
Yeah, do you put HP sauce on that?
No sauce. No, keep it clean. Just bacon so that it melts the butter and the butter drips down your chin as you're eating it. Oh, lovely. A good cup of strong English tea and some chocolate for dessert.
No BLT, just the bacon?
Just the bacon.
No bacon, lettuce, tomato, no?
You got to keep it pure, Reza.
Keep it clean, he says, as if a bacon were the cleanest, purest thing. Butter, bacon dripping all over the place.
And you can't grill it. You have to fry it. You have to fry it because grilling is too healthy.
And do you like it crunchy?
Fairly toasty, fairly crunchy. Not crunchy American crunchy. American bacon tends to be very hard and crunchy. No, English bacon that's just a bit toasted and changes colour to be just a little bit brown.
And I have to say, in my opinion, I wonder if you agree, no offence to some listeners, English bacon, I prefer it to Spanish bacon, I have to say.
Yes.
It's a different cut from the animal, isn't it? It's got less fat on it and it's a different taste.
Well, the main part of the bacon, English bacon, the meaty part is the lomo. They take that cut out and sell it as lomo and put that in sandwiches, but it's not the same.
There's less fat and more meat on it.
Exactly. Different taste.
If you could be any animal in the world at all, which would you choose to be?
When I asked you that question, you said sloth. But I also know you have a certain affection, as I do, for elephants.
Yes.
So I would either choose an elephant because I think they're lovely animals and nobody messes with them when they're grown up, so no natural enemies. But another thing I would like to be is a fly on the wall in particular rooms. For example, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in some politician's room to see what they're talking about, or just fly around and listen to conversations in places where I'm not supposed to be. That would be interesting. So probably an elephant or a fly. That's two extremes of the spectrum.
Does that reveal something about your character? An elephant is enormous, a fly is tiny. Are you an extremist?
Possibly. I mean, you'd know better than I would. Do you think I'm an extremist?
No, for most things, no. But perhaps in the animal world, yeah. But when it comes to politics, ideology, lifestyle, I find you a very moderate person, I have to say.
I think for politics I probably am. But if I wanted to go in the middle with an animal, then of course it's got to be cockle. I'd love to be cockle because no animal in the world eats better, is treated better, is walked better than cockle.
Well, get in the queue because if I had to be a specific animal, it would be him as well.
What a life.
I've seen how he lives. In fact, since I work as his butler, I know very well how he lives.
What a wonderful life your dog has.
Well, Craig, I was going to wrap it up, but do you think there's anything else about you that the listeners should know?
Well, why don't we ask the listeners? If you'd like more information about either myself or Reza, please get in touch and send us a voice message. If you want to ask us anything to do with English or in general, go to speakpipe.com, speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. Or you could send us an email with a comment or question. Emails to me go to Craig, Craig, @inglespodcast.com or to Reza at belfastreza, Reza, @gmail.com.
Also, you might like to visit the Mansion Inglés online store. You'll find that at store.mansioningles.net, and there you'll find lots of interesting courses and material which will help you improve your English.
Including our recent pronunciation course that is for sale at the same place. Thank you to all of you who are helping us by supporting this podcast on Patreon. We don't have time to name you individually here on the podcast, but you can see a list of all our Patreon supporters at the website Patreon, patreon.com/Ingles podcast. And before we go, we'd like to welcome new Patreon supporters who have joined us this month. They are Jessica Ramos, Jose Vázquez, Roque Montiel, and Luis Gil. Thank you very much. Reza, if someone wanted to join those lovely people, how can they sign up to the Patreon program?
If you're interested, you could sign up for as little as $1.21, more or less. It's actually $1 and the 21 cents is VAT. It's the tax, the IVA. And if you do that, you get instant access to recent audio transcriptions. If you're interested, have a look at Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/Ingles podcast.
And on next week's episode, we're going to be speaking about flirting and pickup lines. So what do you say to somebody who you're attracted to and you would quite like to meet? We'll try and help you with that next week if we can remember how to do it. So until then, thank you for listening. It's goodbye from me.
And see you around sometime.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.